Welcome to another video retrospective for Wayback Wednesday. I'm Andrew, and today we're looking back at another basketball game released for the Super Nintendo, World League Basketball. Today we're looking back at another basketball game released for the Super Nintendo, NCAA Basketball. Today we're looking back at a basketball game released for the Super Famicom, Super Dunk Shot. Something strange going on here. Alright, so here's the deal. Today we're looking at a basketball game that was released under 3 different names in 3 different regions, featuring identical gameplay, but slight differences in their season modes. Developed by Sculpted Software and published by HAL, perhaps most famous for the Kirby series, this game was NCAA Basketball in North America, World League Basketball in Europe and other PAL regions, and Super Dunk Shot in Japan. The 3 different versions were made for the same reason there wasn't a worldwide release for any of the college sports titles by EA Sports and 2K Sports. Different parties own the domestic and international licensing rights for the NCAA, so barring imports, college sports games are only available in the United States and Canada. To get around this issue, this particular game was rebranded into a fictional global basketball league for release in the PAL regions. As for what Japan got with Super Dunk Shot, well, I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. For those of you who can't tell by my accent and the fact I'm saying basketball rather than basketball, I'm Australian. Australia is a PAL country, so World League Basketball is the version of this game that I played back in the 90s. As such, that's the game I'm going to talk about first. Once again, World League Basketball makes use of a fictional global basketball league, with 60 teams from around the world divided up into 6 conferences, and featuring 720 fictional players. Incidentally, I always name my ultimate team and my team the Breeze, after Chicago's fictional team in this game. It's actually an interesting concept to play with fictional players, as you're not really worried about the players not playing like their real-life counterparts, or getting the right stats. You just play basketball. It's 5-on-5 sim-oriented gameplay with FIBA rules. It was released in 1992, the same year as NBA All-Star Challenge. However, whereas that game was a disappointment, an interesting release, but a disappointment nevertheless, World League Basketball was a very good game. In fact, not only does it hold up respectively well today, given its vintage, it's probably one of the best basketball games of its era. I was actually given the game a few years after it came out, and while NBA Live 95 and NBA Live 96 are probably my top 2 games from that time, and I was playing them a lot back then, World League Basketball is definitely right up there. For a basketball title released in 1992, it's remarkably sophisticated. You have your basic controls, shoot, pass, steal, block and rebound, and you have timeouts and substitutions, which you need to take advantage of as players do fatigue. There was no sprint or turbo control, but the game doesn't play too badly without it. You can also call offensive and defensive plays on the fly, set strategies such as whether or not you want to crash the boards, and so on. It's primitive compared to the strategy implemented in modern games, but for the time, quite functional and impressive. There's no direct pass functionality, but you can see where you're passing the ball by the position icons that appear above your teammates' heads. The colour of the icons indicates the level of risk in passing to them. A green icon indicates an open man, while a yellow icon indicates that your teammate is guarded, and the pass a little more risky. A red icon indicates the teammate that's being guarded closely, meaning a pass to them is very likely to be intercepted. There are no visible player ratings, but the players' previous season statistics indicate their strengths and weaknesses, and you will find there is some slight differentiation in their abilities when you play. Something that I always enjoyed in World League Basketball was the ability to perform different dunks. Depending on whether you simply pressed the shoot button under the basket or held the D-pad left, right, up or down, you can perform a basic two-hander, a reverse dunk, a hang-time dunk, a turnaround dunk, or a one-handed sky dunk. Aside from the signature moves in EA's NBA Playoff series, the forerunner to NBA Live, dunks and layups were chosen at random when you attempted them in older games, so it's nice to actually have some control over them. The graphics are quite good by 1992 standards. There's no crowd in the stadium. Well, you can hear them, you just can't see them, but the game makes good use of the Super Nintendo's Mode 7 technology to create a 3D environment. As you can see, you play from a baseline angle that's not dissimilar to the ones you find in modern games, and the camera rotates as necessary as the possession changes. In tournament mode, you select your team, play through a season to qualify for the championship tournament, and attempt to become the world champions. Through the use of battery backup, you can not only save seasons in progress, but even a game currently in progress. From personal experience, I can attest to the latter feature being extremely handy. All in all, it plays a very good and fun game of basketball, making great use of the technology that was available at the time. There's even some voice clips in the game. For me, it's right up there with the early NBA Live and NBA Jam games as far as my favourite basketball video games of the 90s are concerned. The main differences between World League Basketball and NCAA Basketball are the teams and tournament structure. In NCAA Basketball, those same 720 fictional players are now placed on real schools from 5 major Division I conferences, and the season mode reflects the NCAA season and championship tournament. Apart from that, it's basically the same game, with the same enjoyable gameplay. Only the branding and tournament structure are different. There's not much else to say about it really, except that it's probably one of the best college basketball games that a lot of gamers probably don't actually remember. For PAL gamers like myself, World League Basketball was a lot of fun to play, but I think I'd have enjoyed NCAA Basketball just as much. And that brings us to Super Dunk Shot. Truth be told, I'd have really enjoyed playing this version of the game too. I mean, I was obsessed with basketball growing up in the 90s. Of course I want to play with my favourite player, Jordan of the Chicago Bulls. Yes, really. The Super Dunk Shot is basically an NBA game without the NBA license, with everything, or almost everything, changed just enough to avoid a lawsuit. There is no way this would ever happen these days, but it did in 1992 and it's glorious. I mean, look at these teams. The Bills, the Super Jets, the Pistols, the Jaws, the Lasers, the Clips. They're not really trying with a lot of those names, and as for the logos, yeah, that's some open and shut copyright infringement right there. You just can't imagine anyone would get away with that now. In addition to the renamed teams, we have the aforementioned Jordan, whose previous season statistics are suspiciously similar to Michael Jordan's. You'll also notice Pippins and Granty, completing the Bills trio from the early 90s. The Boston Celeries, really? Have their big three of Bard, McHale, and Parrish. Yeah, some players they didn't bother renaming, like Johnson of the Lasers, or they just stuck a letter on the end of someone's name like Ewing with an extra E of the New York Kicks. Seriously, how can you not love this? To their credit, some of the jersey colours are different, and most player likenesses don't even come close to an early 90s video game approximation of the people they're meant to be. Well, not meant to be, but totally are meant to be, wink wink. The teams are divided up into the Atlantic, Central, Midwest and Pacific divisions, and the game offers 4 quarters of 4, 8 or 12 minutes, rather than 2 halves of 6, 12 or 20 minutes, as in World League Basketball and NCAA Basketball. Other than that, and the absence of battery backup saves, as Super Dunk Shot instead utilises a dreaded password system, it's essentially the same game as the other two versions, which makes it a fine basketball game. However, it's the added novelty of practically being a bootleg NBA game that makes it particularly entertaining. World League Basketball, NCAA Basketball, or Super Dunk Shot. Whichever name you know the game by, it's one of the best fictional, college, or unlicensed NBA knockoff games to be released on the Super Nintendo. It's a game that's well worth a second look more than 20 years later.